Welcome to the Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast, a show created to help painting company owners build a thriving painting business that does well over $1 million in annual revenue. I'm your host, Brandon Pierpont, founder of Painter Marketing Pros and creator of the popular PCA educational series, Learn, Do, Grow, Marketing for Painters. In each episode, I'll be sharing proven tips, strategies, and processes from leading experts in the industry on how they found success in their painting business. We will be interviewing owners of the most successful painting companies in North America and learning from their experiences. In this series, titled Systems Beat Fear, John MacFarland of MacFarland Painting will be discussing how to overcome what can be scary chasms in your company's growth journey through the implementation of effective systems. It is a 5-part series. In episode 1, John discussed team pay philosophy and how it sets the stage for accountability in his company. In episode 2, John covered growth sticking points he has experienced while scaling MacFarland Painting Company. In episode 3, John deep dived into his systems for his office and sales. In episode 4, this episode, John will lay out the systems he uses to ensure success in his operations management and out in the field. And in episode 5, the final episode, John will discuss his unique approach to meetings and how they have become the most productive part of his team's week. If you want to ask John questions related to anything in this podcast series, you can do so on our exclusive Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast forum on Facebook. Just search for Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast forum on Facebook and request to join the group. Or type in the URL facebook.com/groups/Painter Marketing Mastermind. Again, that URL is facebook.com/groups/Painter Marketing Mastermind. There you can ask John questions directly by tagging him with your question so you can see how anything discussed here applies to your particular painting company. Hi, John.
Not much. We're back.
We're back, man. We're back. Number 4 of 5. I am excited to get into your operations systems.
Mm-hmm.
So we discussed,
I think it's one of the easiest things to start to implement in a growing company, and it's a little less scary often than hiring sales, hiring offices, getting a building or a warehouse and things like that. So this should be pretty easy for people to start grabbing some things and throwing them in their business.
I love it, man. All right, well, I guess take the lead. Tell me, where do we start?
Oh, gosh. Let's start with phones. Phones was a scary thing for me. I'm a bit of an admitted control freak at times. And
we all are, John. That's why we do what we do, man.
I know. Phones and phone calls and handling that stuff and then not being able to answer the phones is one thing with an office. You get an office number, a VoIP number. There's a lot of services now that there weren't around back in the day. But employees having to communicate with customers is a critical thing. I have 2 philosophies, and they sound kind of contradictory of each other. But one, if you arrive on time, as we've said and planned, there's really no reason to communicate. You just show up at 8:30 when you're supposed to, and you finish at 5 when you're supposed to. But, so that's part of this, is just that accountability. Functionally, that doesn't work, right? Something happens, people aren't at home, you got to ask them a question. And so I think having access to communications for your field staff, that you can have a finger on the pulse, is critical. So we use an app that, is a shared number of the company. It has a whole interface that our office staff can use, and they can see when, someone texts a client, a message or calls a message. We get a whole transcript of that we can access, which, sounds like, okay, you're just making sure your employees are arriving on time and things like that. That's part of it, right? That's the low hanging fruit. But when that customer calls back the office and says, I don't remember if the guy said they're going to be here at 8 o'clock or 9:30. I think they had a stop to make in the morning. Our office goes and looks and says, hey, no, they said 8:30. They're going to hit the paint store real quick, and then they're in your driveway. For us, that saves us time. We're not trying to track down the crew that's on the project. Sure. And if I was a smaller company, I'd know what my guys are telling homeowners, when and how things are getting done. You can make sure that dialogue is appropriate. They're not late. They're not missing appointments. They're starting on time. So I think that communication app of some form is really one of those foundation pieces I think contracting companies need to implement pretty quick.
So is this, when you say communication app, would this be like Slack, or is that kind of thing we're talking about?
Yeah, what we use is called Weave, but yep, all pretty similar. Yep, you can text and phone call through it. Our staff's numbers come through as that number, not their personal cell phone numbers. I said this in an earlier episode, make sure your clients save your phone number. No one answers unknown numbers anymore. And so
Yeah.
you'll call them and need their paint color or need to do something, and you're going to get their voicemail. So if you do this, then when they're getting a text, it says MacFarland Painting is texting you, and our guys just sign it, to see you at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning from John. And it's real simple. And for me, I wish I had this years ago. I didn't deal with a lot of impropriety from my crews out there in the field, but there's always a concern, were we missing appointments? Was a contractor going to, call them on the side and see if they'll paint a room, on the side and on a weekend? That stuff does happen in our world. And this really just allows me to make sure that the communication is consistent and on time and the way we want it.
So is it when the homeowners are getting communicated with, are there different numbers that they are seeing, or they all are seeing the same number?
They all are seeing one number.
Oh,
And
wow.
in our file, we could log in and I could put in your first and last name, and every conversation we've had with you on there would be listed. We have little initials on our end that shows which one of us here communicated if somebody didn't sign off in the text. And for me, it's just critical. It's a local number, right? So it's not a goofy 800 number or fragmented number. And for me, that's one of the cheapest services that we just couldn't get by without.
So it's called Weave.
Weave is what we've used. Yep, we've tried a few. And Weave seems to be the most friendly for what we're doing. Taking pictures from a client, they want to text you the color of the paint can or a match or something that they found. Boom, it goes into there, and you're not going to lose it. So
I love that, because we use Slack at Painter Marketing Pros, but Slack is, I don't think it's the best in the world for a painting company. The needs are a little bit different. It works great for a tech company or marketing company. But yeah, Weave. I will have to check that out. Okay, so communication, standard communication, protocols for how that communication occurs, aka, sign your name at the bottom, make sure that you request for the homeowner to save the number so that you can get in touch with them when you need to, things like that. And then ultimately just having that accountability throughout the company, and really almost like the paper trail of the communications that are occurring, and making sure those communications are consistent.
Because we get scared as business owners to give up that control. Those calls all went through us. The colors, the paint takeout,
terrifying.
it all went through us, and you're getting rid of that. So there's some solace in knowing, okay, I can access that information. I know that it's coming through a number that I'm going to own. I had a really great project manager who was good, and he left on fairly good terms and went and started his own company. Well, if you don't have things like this, they're texting that guy, and you may not care about that, but you really might. And in my case, I did. We were successful because of not necessarily this individual. And so I wanted to hold that information in that client file. And I don't want them texting my guys off hours and evenings and weekends and weird questions. This professionalizes that a lot. They could, in theory, check this app all hours of the day, but no one here does. We still operate 7 to 5. And so if something's coming in after that, unless they're expecting it, the cool thing about Weave is you can actually assign clients with like departments or teams, so that you won't get notifications from other teams or other people in the company. And then you don't have to sort through a bunch of stuff. You just tag them to yourself, and that's kind of slick too.
That is slick.
We get 60, 80 texts on that a day on top of our phone calls. And so it's really key for us to sort that and have it all one spot.
Is there anybody who is just kind of reading all of it, or do you have any SOP for that? Or is this just, hey, you have the data if you need it?
Yeah, our office manager, Danielle, has that screen up on her screen all the time. She's just kind of keeping a side eye on it and making sure that there's nothing that sits out there unchecked for too long. But we found our crews are so rapid fire to get back with people. It's way better than even email. If their work email is on their phone, which it is, it's not necessarily their primary, but they don't have notifications on it. Sometimes if they're not super active, our project managers are not getting 50, 60 emails a day that are work related. But in Weave, they're really looking for those little icons to pop up, and they can respond and hammer that out.
Yeah, I love it, man. All right, so Weave, communication, accountability, streamline that, own it. Everyone's accountable to it, and then you give people their time off so that people aren't having, for example, their personal cell phones ringing or things like that. What's next?
For me, I kind of made some checklist, that curbside checklist that we've had for a long, long time. Standardizing how we're arriving in the driveway, where we're parking, where's our staging area or shop going to go, lawn sign out, customer introduction. Those are check boxes. Now they're virtual check boxes, through our app. But we still have paper copies. I'm still at heart kind of a paper dude, and I like to actually have that in my hands and just go through. Stupid little annoyance for a homeowner is the guys get there. We told them we'd be there at 8:30. We park in the driveway. Somebody didn't tell them we were going to put back up in the driveway to offload our stuff. They're getting ready to take kids to the school and we're in their way. Is it
Yeah.
a big deal? No, but it's kind of annoying, right? And so that's part of our week before phone call. We're going to say, exterior season, early in the season, we need water on, windows closed, breakable stuffs, wind chimes removed and out of the area, just like we would on the interior. We have a whole checklist for that pre-job that we're going through that kind of overlays to when we arrive on that job, so that we're giving people a consistent product, because more issues that we've ever had come from like a lack of communication or being let down a little bit. We deal with very little, this isn't painted properly, or I don't like the way this finish looked. It's
Yeah.
all these softer skills and these personality, traits and that communication line with the customer that is either going to make or break a job, in my opinion.
Do you, and this might be sort of an unfair question, but do you think that what you just said, hey, the usual complaints, or if there's anything that's negative, it's likely to be not related to the actual painting project, but something else. Do you think that's a normal thing for painting companies?
Probably not. Probably not. For me, it's kind of always been that, every single issue we have starts with lack of communication. It could still be a painting technique or process problem that, this didn't cover in 2 coats and it's going to take a third. So we have a process for that. We're going to do a color. Bright whites are popular right now by us. They're hard to cover, right? That aluminum oxide has been stripped out of paint. They're hollow. They're just not what they used to be. We're buying $50 gallon product that covers like $10 gallon product did 15, 18 years ago. That's a problem. So if we have what we perceive to be a potential challenge in 2-coat coverage, one of the first things we're going to do is do a drawdown on their walls, show them 1, show them 2, and then show them what 3 coats is, and point out, say, hey, I don't think 2 is going to pass. I think we need to do 3. The cost is going to be this before we get started. That does a couple things. One, it eliminates the homeowners from thinking maybe we could have done this differently and put it on heavier the second coat. And why are we calling them now at 3 p.m.?
Or it's like maybe like a bait and switch or something.
100%.
On the whole time.
And our sales staff and design staff has told them, this is really bright white. This could be an issue. So we generally, in any of those situations, they already have a 3rd coat line item is an option for walls. But the other thing about that too, in doing that, is then we're not putting a super high-end finish for all 3 coats. We can go with our ceiling paint or a prime coat, all the way down the wall, which saves us $20, $30 a gallon and dries faster. And it's a really nice flat finish. So the premium stuff is going to stick to it like glue. So we just saved some money, and we didn't have to find out later that, oh, we need more of the wall paint. Remember, my guys are paid a percentage of the job. They often have extra ceiling paint in a van. They very rarely have an extra 3 or 4 gallons of wall paint. So if we have something to burn, or we might have available to us to save a trip, it's going to be that wall paint or that ceiling paint, first coat on the wall. So, that part of walkthrough and that systemization of that, we call it a curbside checklist, to me is critical. We got so many people that we've worked for years and years ago. I want it to feel the same, even if it's a different team in their house. And that's one of the ways to do that. Make sure we have access to the parking in their driveway or whatever agreed upon, or that we are going to park in the street. Where's that staging area in your home going to be? We've already surveyed from our sales team if they have small kids or a puppy and dogs and active lifestyle. Does that stuff need to go in and out every day, or can we put it in a room and shut a door?
Right.
All that box material. And so that curbside checklist, in my opinion, is probably one of the most unchanged things we have in the last 10 years. There's very little edits to that.
How big is that checklist?
It's one single sheet, probably 20 line items. Our crews at the bottom of that are totaling up their hours worked and actually determining the profitability of the job as they turn that in. And so we use, when we run our jobs reports every week of the profitability of jobs and any issues we ran on, that curbside report is checked off yes or no. Did they do that? And if it's a no, we're really going to get after them. It may seem like kind of not a big deal, but we'll chase down everyone on every job. And we don't want to see one line all the way through the one side. I want to see individual checks if they're doing it on paper. I think it should be done by a couple different people. Ours has generally a crew leader management kind of stuff at the top, and then crew people at the bottom. It's kind of split on some of the job duties so that everyone has a job to do. You know, we talk about lawn signs a lot. I just had a conversation. We have a really kind of high visibility project near us right now, and our sales guy went by to just do a site visit, and there was no lawn sign. And does it seem like a big deal? To me, it does. We get a couple $100,000 a year that the referral source
I
is
would
10
have a
cents.
problem with that.
So, you know,
Yeah.
and
It's
we
free
want
advertising.
yeah, 100%. And, you know, so we put a lawn sign on every job and we leave them. Corrugated plastic, they're $4 a piece. We get a smoking deal. Every job, unless it's a condo association that cannot have one, gets one. And even those, we'll put it on and see if it lasted a day or two before someone yanks it. But
Ask for forgiveness, not for permission.
hey, we don't know. We're not in the HOA. They are.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that process of lawn sign, back in, customer check-in, you know, I do a whole sit-down thing on communication. And one of the things I talk about, because we have different personalities. I have people that own their own company, are very professional and thorough, and I have people that are very quiet, introverted. So we're starting to look for things to talk to someone about. You know, hey, Brandon, I noticed we worked at your house a couple of years ago. That's great. I wasn't at MacFarland yet, but yeah, it looks really glad that you called us back. Oh, I see you're a hockey player, baseball player, bowler, whatever that may be. As they're introducing yourselves, and everybody gets a business card from me. I got a lot of people that, frankly, at first blush, just look like painters and look similar. That's not meant to be offensive. And if I give you a business card, the customer is much more apt to say, "Hey, Brandon, that's right, Brandon. Can you make sure that when you guys leave out of here today, can you lock that door behind you? I'm going to be gone for a few hours. I'm not going to see it." So that makes a difference, and that's all done in that pre-job walkthrough on that curbside checklist. That, you know, that introduction and what are we going to talk about? You know, a lot of this is about your project for sure, but you know, our goal is to have somebody come in, give us 15 minutes in the morning, leave, and then not see them again until the end of the project for a 15-minute walkthrough, because we're going to be in their way, they're going to be in our way. It just works best. And if we're organized enough, that works for everybody. They know where we're coming, what rooms we're doing. They know who's in their home. They're comfortable with the whole thing. You know, they say, if you need anything, call me. And, you know, one of my jokes was always, if I need something from you when your project's going on, I'm going to start with the fire department, and then you can call your insurance company, because I'm not going to need you for anything, you know?
Yeah.
And that just kind of puts people at ease, like, oh, okay, I guess I can not be stressed and, you know, go do something else.
Sure. Yeah. And I think you're right. The business card does seem like a small thing, but the devil's in the details. And I think it makes it so much more personable.
Yeah. And they hold on to that. And even a lot of our teams don't even have company emails. It may be their project manager's email on there, but it's still their name. And that's enough pride. And then when we give them where they get an assigned email, it's kind of like a stepping up, like, okay, cool. I'm one of the guys here. You know, I'm one of the top people, but for $20, everyone can get business cards. You know?
When you have a crew out, does every single member of the crew give a business card, or is it the team lead, or how does that work?
Functionally, probably not everybody. I think there might be the team leader or the next person, you know, kind of the 1 and 2s. But I don't know if they might be doing that. The other part of this too is we pay a 3% finder's fee for work. So when that neighbor comes up, it's amazing the different feel you get when you incentivize someone to get a job, as opposed to, oh yeah, write down the name off the van and call the office. I don't care, whatever, I'm on a ladder. You pay them 3%, they come right down. That potential lead gets a handshake and, oh, this is what we're doing here. Do you know Brandon? You know, you live in the neighborhood. This is, we're doing his exterior. Well, they seal that deal. Where if they are standing on the roof and say, oh, write down the number, they're not going to write down that number. They're gone, you know?
So these are people you're saying who the prospect in this case maybe is going by the house.
Yeah, driving by, walking the dog.
Okay. Do you guys kind of canvas the neighborhood of your projects? You do anything like that?
We don't. I did for a long time. You know, back in the day, I actually took the monument signs that were in a couple premium neighborhoods that I wanted to be in more, and I made a door hanger where that neighborhood monument sign was at the top. That's and cool. Then my information was on the bottom, so they saw it. Cherry Hill Village is one by us here in Canton. It's very recognizable. And we hung them on all the doors. My sister-in-law at the time was probably 16, 17, and she would drive through there and just dish those things out. It was worth the money to make that very, very succinct and very much neighborhood specific.
Sure.
I don't think my general one would have done much good. It didn't. And but when I put the neighborhood, you know, monument sign on that, it was like, oh, this might be something for the neighborhood. Up too late. I got you. You're reading it, and now you want your house painted. So
That's a neat idea, man.
Yeah.
But why don't you do it anymore?
Um, we're busy enough with other things. And I
Yeah.
just kind of got away from it,
Yeah.
it's been a little bit since I've done it, but it's something I would go back, the concept of 10 up and 10 down. Um, when you're working there, I think we don't do a fantastic job of that marketing in areas that we're working in, or specific neighborhoods or mail carrier routes. We're busy without it, but it's something I think I need to revisit.
Yeah. You're an alley cat, John. Now you're a house cat.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah.
You're well fed. It's
Yeah,
all
that's the
good.
problem. I can do door hangers with the best of them though.
Yeah, but now, yeah, we're seeing the opportunities here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you do get caught up in other stuff. You have other challenges as you grow up business. Doesn't mean it's not something you'll circle back to or isn't a good idea, but
Right.
you've also spent a tremendous amount of time building your organization,
Mhm.
SOPs. All right, so we have curbside checklist, which I think it sounds like obviously there's a lot that does. There's probably a quality control aspect, but it sounds like the number one thing that really does is provide a stellar customer experience.
Mhm.
Ease of mind, right? They have the expectations, they know what's going to happen. They don't feel like they have to do work or keep tabs on you.
Yep.
We have the business cards. So you've made it personal. You've given your painters pride. You've attached a name, not just, hey, it's some random guy painting from this company. And then you have Weave. So essentially streamlining, automating, and really centralizing your communication.
Mhm.
What's next?
For me, it's kind of the end of project wrap up, I think is, again, I mean, we're talking about painting, but we're not talking about actually painting, which is kind of interesting. But again, I think it's where the
Yeah.
battles are won and lost, really doesn't involve paint. So at the end of the job, we have a very specific process for this. You're going to know in advance what day and time we're wrapping up your project. If it's a 4-day job, you're going to know, hey, the last day between 4 and 6, we're going to need you. And every time we talk to you, we're going to dial that in a little bit. I don't want to cannibalize someone's time. I'm not holding them hostage for all afternoon to do a walkthrough with us. That's not fair. So if we're going to send you an invoice before the job is totally done, maybe we added in some doors that you asked about. We're going to customize a little note and said, hey, Brandon, here's your invoice. We added those 6 door slabs you wanted to add. Take a look at this, make sure everything looks good. I'll see you at our walkthrough at 4:30. We're still post-COVID time, a lot of people working at home, but that's better received than knocking on a home office door or texting somebody or, yelling for them throughout the house. So we're gonna dial in that time. When we get close to that time, we're gonna walk up to that client and say, hey, listen, we're getting close. I'm gonna do my team walkthrough in a minute. And then I'm gonna go back and grab you. You got about 15 minutes and I'm gonna need you to walk around. Is that okay? And you're gonna say, oh yeah, I'm just getting dinner ready. Just holler for me. We'll get you. We make a big production out of the team walkthrough. So we're going to have 3 or 4 people with different colors and finishes, ceiling paint, trim paint, all that stuff. And we're going to go through a couple things. One, I want them to know that we've already looked at this. It changes it where it's not this taillight warranty. If I don't detail their work, then they're not going to come back. We want them to see that we've already done this. Obviously, I don't want to ask for a walkthrough with a client when it's 3/4 done and have them be like, holy crap, this is bad, that's bad, that's bad. So we want to get it very close to being 1,000% complete. We're going to tell them about the time we're going to do our team walkthrough, but we're also going to trade roles. So if you cut in ceilings, I'm going to look at that ceiling cut in. If I rolled walls, you're going to look at that wall cut in. It's not an issue of ability to make something look right. It's often just an eye. And I think people get a little ahead of themselves when they did something and they think it's good enough. And then maybe even a guy comes behind and I can't cut in as straight as you can, but I know that the ceiling line could maybe be a little tighter. And so I say, hey, Brandon, that's not going to work. Hit that real quick. We do that as a team. And I think it helps learn. I think a lot of us, and I did this very poorly back in the day, you send your lower end guys out of the house to start racking ladders and shaking out drop cloths and loading up the van. They don't see this. This is the work. This is the last part of it. So if you have the lower end people or the trainees or the apprentices bail out of the house, they're missing all that attention to detail. And then how do you expect them to then be able to achieve that level of detail when they thought it was done, at 4:30 and you didn't come out of the house until 5 o'clock with a check because you were detailing all these little things out. So for me, doing it as a team and trading roles is critical.
Yeah.
And I do a whole training thing with my staff on that exact thing. How does that look?
Yeah, it's really I think that's genius. Yeah, it's easy for us to just your eyes just gonna miss it because you were already there, you already did it, you already saw it. It's so easy to miss something. And the idea that you're basically apprentices or you're kind of more novice trainers, they're gonna have a hard time leveling up when the most important work, when the stuff that's really involving customer satisfaction, they're just being pulled out
Mhm.
of that. How do you ever expect them to be able to level up and do a good job? That the only way is they're gonna probably make mistakes when you actually have them level up.
Yeah. Well, I had a guy years ago who complained about the amount of time that I chatted with customers after the job was done. They're in the van, the ladders are racked, we're ready to go home.
That you're
Everyone
saying the
says,
painter was complaining about it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'd come out of the house and it was like, oh my God, what took you so long? Well, I got two friends' numbers, for estimates. I'm calling them on the way home. So that's why I did that 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, I
10
went through,
minutes, 2 leads. That's a good trade.
yeah, and they're slam dunks. They close 100%. Their friends already know the price. They live in a similar home. It's a done deal. And so, not rushing through that. I think you give people a bad impression when you rush through the end of the job. We talked about this before. What we do is a luxury type of item, and it's a feel good, beautiful thing. There got to be a little bit of celebration when you're done. So if you're just throwing your stuff together and running out the door, I think you're devaluing yourself. This should be, man, Brennan, your colors are great. And damn, we did a really good job putting on the wall, didn't we? Look how tight that is. You're like,
Yeah.
yeah, you guys are great. So that's part of it. Our end of the job process, we talk about paint storage. We're leaving you leftover paint. How long is it going to last? If you put it in your garage, that's a no-no. How to do a touch-up when your kids inevitably throw something into it in 2 or 3 weeks and things like that. Add a little bit of water, less is more. This is how you touch this up. And, not talking about a miss, but an actual damage to the wall. Or how do you wash this? Most homeowners' impression of how you wash walls is nothing like the paint manufacturers or the painters. They're scrubbing it to death, and it's like the softest cloth, a little bit of water will take it out, or it's not coming out of almost any paint. So
Yeah.
don't braid the walls. We're going to talk about the review process then too. So this is one of the few things that we do that's fairly consistently scripted. I can't leave your house unless you could give us a 5-star review. It seems like you're there. Is there any reason, anything you want me to hit again or go through with you? Do you want me to step out of the house so you can look at it? Do you need a minute? But I'm not comfortable leaving you with anything but a 5-star job. And the homeowners say, and you can tell, right? Some people say, yeah, no, it's good. Well, that's not good. So then you got to press. If they say, oh, this has just been amazing, and they start ripping off how good you are in these 5 compliments, fantastic. What you're going to get once you pay your bill, you're going to get an automated text response that's going to have links for a review immediately. And it'd mean a lot to me if you went ahead and just click that. We have at different times some contests for staff. We'll do $100 a month to the staff member with the most mentions, their name. That's a popular one with the crews. It costs me way less than the $100 to pay that because they're getting us roles in the process is so much better in the meantime. But the guys will just say, like, some of it's just bragging. We print really nice ones and put them on the shop. We talk about them in meetings. We share them in our company internal Facebook page. So part of this is just ego. It's really, it's great for you guys, right? And Google and SEO and all that stuff. But in-house, there's a little bit of a challenge. Like, hey, I got 4 last month, Brandon. I didn't see you on 1. What's up? Were you asleep? Or and that's cool too. But we're going to tell the customers they're getting it, and they're going to personalize it. And my story for this, I had an appliance company come out and do new appliances in my house, and they did a fine job. They delivered them, they set them in place, no big deal. And the guy says to me, he goes, "You're going to get a review from us, and if you could fill it out, I'd appreciate it." And all of us are like, "Okay, no, I don't care," And then he said, "We actually get like $5 for every positive one that we get, in addition to this delivery." And I was like, "Oh, can you send it to me right now?" And he's like, "Well, no, you'll get it later." And I'm like, "No, can you send it to me right now?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, send it to me. I'm going to do it. I don't want to forget. I want you to get the $5. I didn't care about the appliance company whatsoever. But the 2 guys that took these appliances up the steps, and even just a couple hours they were there, made an impression that they're good guys, that were hard workers. And I want to get $5. It's not my money.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it too. This is important to me because I want to beat my coworkers. And that resonates because people don't care about the companies. If I'm doing this right, company's secondary. They want to give John a review because John is great, and I'm going to mention John, or I'm going to mention Marcia in the office, and those are things we look for too, is how many different departments get mentioned in those reviews. How did the process go from start to finish? But we're telling them you're going to get this from us, and it is something we care about deeply.
So you have do you have them say that? Do you have them say, hey, we actually monitor this and I want to beat my coworkers? Is that a standard line for them?
Yeah, that, or we have a contest going on right now. Or I haven't gotten one in a while, and they'll kind of, joke around and be like, I just feel really left out. I don't know what's going on. Probably no one likes me.
Nobody likes me.
Hook a
Please
brother
like
up.
me.
But yeah, I think one of those is all it takes, that you actually will know when it actually gets sent through. The painter will. And people have an allegiance to them. They've been in their house for 2, 4, 5 days and, been around near dinner and all these other things. And it's like, to me, that's all it takes. It's just to humanize it a bit.
Yeah, man, that's great. What's your success rate? So how many of your projects, what percentage of them do you get a 5-star review from?
Gosh, the newer system we're using, I feel like it's a little bit better. Probably about 10% we get a review on, and they're 5 stars. We just got a 4-star about a week or two ago, which I think is fantastic. It was a 4-star job. It wasn't perfect. I think society has gotten so weird where it's 1 star or 5 stars.
It's 1 or 5, man.
Sometimes the ball drops a little bit and you still pick it up, but it's 4. And those are fantastic,
Yeah.
1
Well,
star
shows you're a real company and it's probably a real person. The 1s and the 5s, sometimes they're just a spammer or whatever, leaving something.
Oh yeah, well, we see those. We have a couple of companies near us with their Facebook stuff, and their followers are just in the thousands, but there's like 2 likes per post, and it's like, okay, those are bought and paid
suspicious.
Yeah, we get about 10% back. Yeah, I think it's probably something that our crew doesn't do a good enough job of asking for or indicating the importance. I think would be fair.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, so we have the review generation, and I was actually going to ask that, and you already proactively talked about it, but you said you make the walkthrough at the end an event. It's like an event, and I think the way that you phrased it, I get it. I could see how some people might be hesitant. It might sound like, oh, they're bragging or something, but I know you do it in a certain way. You're not really bragging. You're saying like, man, your house looks great. Like, wow, and you can kind of make the homeowner the hero. Like, oh man, I'm so happy you selected that color for your kitchen. That just looks absolutely stupendous.
Right. Yep.
But yeah, I think this idea, it's a luxury, especially, in interior, you probably didn't need it. It's a luxury. You wanted it, and we should celebrate it. Have a toast to how beautiful your home looks.
Well, we're getting after photos too. So that's part of that close down. Brandon, your house looks so nice. You guys did a great job in your colors. Can we get some after photos of this? I think people are going to like to do this. Is bold, and our crews will be honest. We're painting a ton of whites and grays, and it's nice to throw some bright color out here. It changes my day. Look at my pants. They're all white. I got white and light gray everywhere. Now I got some red on them. And so that's part of it too. We want to take some photos, and hey, you'll see these on our Facebook and stuff the next couple of days. The problem with us is a lot of jobs that we complete on the inside, the furniture is not back, the furnishings aren't back, and it just doesn't. We take afters, but we don't market for them because the room just kind of looks plain, and still not complete. But if it's a pretty good sized job, we'll send Elizabeth out there to take some photos of those, and we don't have people say no to that. There's like a sense of accomplishment in my house. I did such a good job designing this and picking my colors that if these guys want to use it, that's a badge of honor, I think, for most of our clients. And they don't sweat you on that, getting those photos.
That's cool, man. So when they give the business card, do they tell the homeowner that they get a commission for referrals? Is that something that's said or no?
Probably some. It's not standard for us. I think I have some people that'd be very uncomfortable with that.
Sure.
That they would just say, hey, your friends and family asked for me.
Like a painter turned salesman here.
Yeah. But we have some people that do.
Yeah.
We had some people, a guy who didn't have a business card in his truck and had one of his coworkers and took a Sharpie, crossed it off and put his first name and said,
that's a hustler.
He said, I don't have my cards. He goes, make sure you tell him Anthony sent you, not Kyle. And the customer just died laughing. And, they're like, I got to have these guys. They're a riot,
Yeah. Anthony's going to get it done.
Yeah, he did.
I like Anthony.
Flagging people down at the entrance to the neighborhood and giving them whatever it takes.
Yeah, Anthony's getting it across the finish line.
Yep.
Okay, do you have any, so we've done the project, we have the curbside checklist, we've all the centralized communication, we have the 5-star review generation, the end of project wrap up, we make it a big deal. We have the different painters check each other's work, catch different things, and now the project's done. So we've sent them the last stuff. We sent them the review generation. Is there any kind of referral campaign? Is there any kind of database reactivation? What happens to that person now?
Yeah, so we do have a referral campaign. We pay $100 gift card to every referral that closes. We do it we do it for a job over $2,000.
Okay.
Our average job is 4,000. So, if you do the math, it only costs us $50 technically. We
Sure.
don't get a lot of jobs at $2,005. So, we're getting a little bit more bang for our buck out of that. That comes on their invoice. It says, we have a referral program and kind of explains it. The crew often explains that in the home. We send out quite a bit of those. That's one of the few things that we do really old school. I got fired from handwriting the thank you cards because my penmanship is not the greatest. So Elizabeth does that, but it's a customized deal. It just isn't just stamped through. It says, Brandon, the guys really loved it. I saw your red walls, and here's a referral card from Mrs. Jones or whatever that you referred us to. She said to go with you guys. So those go out. We don't do a really good job of drip campaigns and email newsletters and stuff like that. Honestly, we've been so busy the last few years, it's hard to really dedicate time to that, because I think we still get so many referrals at that end of job close that we haven't needed it. We spend an insanely low budget. My marketing budget is less than 4%. And that
I'll just cut this part out, John. Keep
go
going.
ahead.
Keep going. Yeah.
But if you do what Brandon tells you to do, you don't need to spend as much either.
Yeah.
And it's so low because I think if you do that stuff in the home, you end up twofold, right? You get a lead from it or a job from it. You also get the type of customers you want. And we'll tell people flat out, you were great to work for. I want to work for all of your friends and family. This has just been a pleasure. You had all of your stuff.
And that's a nice compliment too.
Yeah. And you brought us in lunch, you had coffee in the morning. It doesn't take much to make guys go over and above for people. The little things, and they'll just say, this was just so nice to work for you. Not the guy before you was terrible, but they're just going to talk about who you were.
Sure.
And that's what we do.
This is like a reverse sale.
Mm-hmm.
People want to feel valued, even if they are the ones paying you money, they still want to feel valued. And you're essentially valuing them, you're validating them. This is going to sound kind of weird, but you're basically telling them they're a good customer. Yeah. And I don't think anyone's like, I want to be a crap customer. I don't think anyone has that in their head.
Yeah.
No, and I don't think people want to be crap anything, so it's nice to feel like you're doing a good job.
Well, I think what we do is, it's personal, right? We're into somebody's home or on the outside of their home for a few days. It's a little obtrusive,
Sure.
We see and hear things that most people don't want people to see and hear at times. And, in arguments between spouses and things like that. And so we're part of the family for a minute, and that's important. And I think for most of our clients, again, let's say the paint jobs look the same, they're going to just remember that part of it forever and say, oh, the crew was so pleasant. They pet my dog. They were joking around with my kids. They shot baskets with my kid on their way out of the project one day, and or something like that. And for a while, I had T-shirts that I would give kids that were just like our T-shirts with our brand on it, and it said Junior Project Manager on the left chest. We still have clients from 10 years ago whose kids can never fit into those. They're like, I still had that T-shirt. I couldn't get rid of it. Those were at $7-8 a piece as a leave behind. Because for most people with children, it's like dogs and pets, right? If you pass the kid test, then you're good.
For sure.
If you are engaging to the kids, like laser, we talked about laser tape measures. I do my homework, and then I'm going to give that to the kid and let him blast the walls and run around with it. It does twofold, right? It gets him away from mom so I can talk about paint, and it keeps him entertained. And it's showing that, like, I get this. I know that, Johnny's an important part of your family, and I don't want to say, hey, can you put him in another room or put him on the, PlayStation.
Lock him in the room. The parents are talking.
We're gonna work around that. That's fine. So we can cohabitate.
Man, that's great. So you don't do the T-shirt leave behinds anymore though for the kids?
I don't. It's been a minute. It's something that's on our list of stuff to reintroduce. We don't. But
I just didn't know if there was like any kind of weird thing, or like a parent got upset, or it's just something that just kind of stopped happening.
Nope, it just kind of died out. We ran through the couple orders and then just didn't do it. Life gets busy, and I somewhere I do have a binder of all those things that we did or ideas that I really need to go back and kind of revisit. We do really, really well with word of mouth networking groups in terms of lead generation and stuff. We do really good on client stuff. So some of the other things, trade shows we do, but those are no one's favorite.
Yeah.
My guys don't love those. I think they make us better at our job because you got to do an elevator pitch and get attention real quick and be dynamic. So for me, if we get a couple jobs, it's great, but it's actually a better training tool than it is a lead generation tool. It just kind of stinks to think about 2 days at a big, busy arena area to do some training. But, in my opinion, it's more training than leads.
I like that mindset though. It's more difficult. And
Yeah.
you're around a bunch of people who are selling. It's when you're at a homeowner's house, it's just you. You don't really have to be phenomenal to stand out, especially, I'll say this as nicely as I can, I guess, competing with other painters. Sometimes the bar's kind of low in terms of the actual sales process. You go to a home show, it's not just painters that are there. So that bar is usually pretty higher, fair amount higher than it is just in the painting industry. So I actually think going to plumbing shows and like HVAC roofing, I think watching the way that they do some of their marketing, the way that they do some of their sales, I actually think it's really educational because they're pretty dialed in.
Oh yeah. Well, I have one guy with a phenomenal sales background, and if he's working the booth, you're not going to get talked to. He's going to catch everyone's eye. He's like, just no way. Jim's going to get him. But that's good to learn because he's really quick to assess, husband, wife, 2 small kids, he gets the giveaway for the kids, a little poppet or a fidget spinner. He's going to say, here you go, just enough to get the parents to stop. And then say, I got something for you too, mom and dad. Here's a flyer on cabinet painting. You got my most intense sales pitch. Like, well, no, actually we're interested maybe in this. And he gets people to stop like no one I've seen.
Well, that's a great education to watch too. The other guys watching Jim go because you're not going to be out there with Jim when he's selling, but you're next to him at the home show.
Right.
I love it, man. Okay. So we've covered a lot. Are there any other big time ones with the operations or out in the field that we should cover in terms of either systems or software or kind of what you've set up here?
Other systems like with van setup, van organization for us is a big one. The last thing on that checklist that they turn in is, did you clean up and set up for the next day?
Nice.
Our crews get here at 7:30 in the morning is their start time. So some are here earlier, but at 7:30. I have very few guys that come in functioning at a level 10 at 7:30. And everyone comes here at that time, but they all don't come back to the shop at the time. So if you need space to move some stuff around and fill a truck or clean something out, that afternoon from 3 to 6 o'clock when the crews are trickling in is a lot better process. And you get guys that want to go home and are motivated. They're not coming in early in the morning talking about the basketball game and this and that and drinking coffee and going slow. So for me, setting up for the next day, the day before is critical. Back in the day at our old shop, I literally had a air horn that at 7:40, I would just start blasting because it does not take more than 10 minutes to get in, clock in, get your keys, get in the truck and go.
I would hate that.
Yeah, no, I was obnoxious, but again, in our pay system, they're incentivized to get out there and get after it early. So I don't have to do that as much anymore, right? It's not herding cattle and getting them out, but I do setting up the day before, inventorying your van. We have lists of those for each van. We have a couple different versions depending on the project manager. If a crew does their own wood replacement or they have another team member do it, is it a large van or a little transit? The lists are different, interior season, exterior season. So that they can go right down and know what they need or don't need. Because again, in our pay system, in any pay system, it's just going to cost the owner in the conventional way.
Sure.
They're short a couple rolls of tape and they run to Sherwin-Williams. Well, that tape that was $5 is now costing you $45 because no one did anything. And so we get very concerned with our paint reps and we beat them up for this bulk pricing, and then you piss it all away because you let guys drive to the store for an hour not doing anything. It's like, you can afford to buy tape retail and not our prices if you just would clean up the system. So prepping is a big part of me. I'm a big prepper, and our crews are looking at I kind of want to get into meetings because it's a segue, but I won't. We'll do it next time. But they're previewing their jobs, right? It's those pictures, they've all been assigned to them. They've done that the week before, so they know on this job we're going to need a little giant ladder for a foyer that's kind of a weird set with a stairway or a ladder pivot, or an 8 to 16 foot on the inside of the home, or something that maybe they don't have in abundance. They're setting it up the day before, so they don't need to think about it in the morning. Back in the day, I used to just handwrite those things on the folders and I'd hand them to everybody, right? So that was better than forgetting it.
Sure.
But now with our system, we can put those notes in at any time. And then what happens if they have to go into the file to retrieve those notes, they're looking at the pictures by themselves. And so it's just like the guys doing the whole team walkthrough. They don't need those notes as much because they're just seeing the pictures and be like, oh, yep, I'm going to want a foldable ladder for that foyer. That's going to be kind of a pain without it. And they might not even get to the notes that are outlining that stuff, right?
Yeah. So with all this, all these systems that you built, and I really like the reference back to the pay scale and kind of how that has set the stage for this whole thing. And that's why we started it with episode 1, because otherwise you're stepping over dollars, to save pennies, which is what a lot of people do. But you obviously have a lot of systems dialed in here. You have a lot of stuff that you've thought through pretty extensively that I think most companies haven't really even considered standardizing. Was this something that you just proactively sat down and just kind of grinded through? Was it something that just sort of organically happened over time? Like, hey, that's a good idea. We should do that. Hey, that's a good idea. Do you have some sort of process for iterating in the future if you come across another idea? How did we get here?
Yeah, no, it didn't sit down and just write them all out. They generally happen one at a time, right?
Okay.
I have an issue with crews not coming prepared, so it's like, okay, this is dumb as heck. Let's write what we want in advance down and be done with it.
Yeah.
I have an issue with we weren't getting reviews or we weren't getting referrals, so let's make sure we dial in this end of the job process. We have a big stack of lawn signs. I bought 1,000 lawn signs. We've done 800 jobs, and the pile is still a mile high. I know we're not putting a lawn sign on every job. What gives? So I think you do it based on the need, and you start with the biggest ones or the ones that make sense to me the most, or the ones I did first. That checklist was one that made sense to me.
Yep.
When I was in the field, I drove a 16-foot enclosed trailer and an F350 crew cab long bed. So parking was difficult for me. That was part of my process with, I really need your driveway. I'm driving a fairly long rig, and I don't really want to take the paint and materials up the driveway from the street. So can we have that cleared when I show up at 8:30? And then when we started driving smaller vehicles, I felt like, and I wasn't making those phone calls, that got lost. And so we had these homeowners that were probably just this much irritated because we parked them in and they got to move their cars. At the end of the world, no. But it means the world the week before when we say, Brandon, when I get there at 8:30, can I park on the side of your driveway? Is there what side you want me to park on? Can we do that? And you're like, oh, God, yeah, park here.
Yeah.
We thought of all these things. This is not our first rodeo. This, again, we talked about this in an earlier one. Most of our clients, even the most affluent ones, have only had a house painted a couple, 2-3 times, right? This week alone, I'm doing 37 jobs. So if I'm not better at this than you are, and I'm not preparing the homeowner for the easiest experience, then I'm not doing my job.
Yeah.
We've been down this. We know the hiccups. We know what's going to happen. I know that your dog can't be near open paints or trays of paint and things like that.
Right.
We're just going to talk about where we're putting that stuff because I really don't want to move it in on your house. I'm losing time in doing that. Potential for a problem or a spill loading up in the vans. That's a time suck to us. So we're just going to ask, where can we put it in your home? Is there a room or area we can put this to stage? And we don't have anyone that says no. They all have a spot. It may not be, right in their foyer, but it's going to be in their house somewhere. As long as you ask, that's great. You don't ask and they come home from work and they have this giant shop area with 4 drop cloths and paint trays wrapped up in plastic in the middle of their living room. That's going to be a complaint.
Oh, for sure.
Your paint can look perfect, but that's going to be the bitch,
Yeah.
You're going to get an email on that.
Yeah. I think it's these little things, and you guys being so proactive about it. And I think it would be easy to think, well, if the homeowner only gets a painting project maybe 3 times in their life or something, then maybe they won't even appreciate how different we are. The fact that other painting companies are going to do that. But to a homeowner, I say this all the time, I think it ruffles some feathers, but I believe it. To a homeowner, painters aren't special. They're in the line with the plumbers. They're in line with electric. They're a home service company. They come out. So that means that you are being compared consciously and subconsciously to every other contractor that has arrived at the house. How many of those contractors do you think are asking these questions? Are this focused on the customer experience? Probably not that many. So for me, it's important to know, like, you are differentiating yourself for sure.
We don't come across many, even the other big ones, well-established, that do a great job and are really well-known in our area. We don't come across many that customers say are even close. from the first contact on. They're like,
I don't think I've ever been asked that question ever. Like,
Yeah.
where do you want us to park? I don't think that question has ever. They're sometimes on the street. They're sometimes I have no idea where they're going to be. Sometimes they're on the door, and I don't know. I'm like, who's knocking on the door because they parked around the corner. I don't see the car. I never know where somebody's going to park.
Yeah. And to me, like, it's just like arriving on time, right? Being early is more inconvenient, especially with most people being busy. It's just expectations. And if you have to
Yeah.
give them a range, then go ahead and give them a range, but don't be at the backside of the range, for arrival time and stuff like that. And I think our estimators do a really nice job of telling people, if you listen to me, we're going to make this super, super simple. And we send out with, their receipt of their deposit. It's in their folder that we give them on site, but it has a whole customer responsibilities. One side's interior, one side's exterior. The first month of exterior painting season in Michigan, we deal with people whose hoses are still winterized and that water's shut off.
Yeah.
And 3 years ago, we pull up to a house and go to plug into it, turn it, and then nothing. Well, it's April and they didn't charge the water yet. Like, those lines get blown out in cold weather states. Well, you just wasted hours. And they're going to call the homeowner. The homeowner's pissed because they got to come home and let you in and turn that on, and they may not even know how to do it. And it just creates the strife. So, windows closed, hoses on, breakable things off. That's exterior phone call.
Yeah.
For power washing every time.
Yeah. It's a collaboration. You guys are working together for a successful project and a smooth project and an easy experience for the homeowner.
Yeah.
John, this is excellent as always. Do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap up this one?
No, I'm excited for the meeting once because
I know you've been excited for that one, man.
It's I think the point is I can show the value of the meetings where you outlay these things. We kind of talked about processes. I was writing a process actually right before we met here, trying to dial in if there's something that's left off a quote scenario, right? How are we dealing with that and kind of if thens. And I got a meeting tomorrow morning with all of my sales and all my project managers where I'm just going to hammer this out. This will be the third version of it. Some things are very similar to the first one, but as we're going, we're finding like, oh, there's a little hiccup here that didn't work quite right. Or, that seemed like that disenfranchised the customer to deal with it over the phone. Sales guy calls and says, hey, but we didn't talk about that over the phone. That's one thing I feel like we're getting a little bit of pushback on, even if it's black and white. So game off, get your butt to the home. If you have an estimate appointment, someone else takes the estimate appointment. That's your quote unquote punishment. For making a mistake on one job, someone else is going to do the other estimate for you. You can't put that off. So you're going to lose a sale, a potential sale, to go deal with the problem. We don't let our guys go and start new work if there's a callback or a touch up or a problem. Same thing with sales. And so this is 2 years we've had this process. It's been rewritten kind of once, and now I'm dialing it in even further. And it's still not going to be perfect. Something will come up that will change it. But I think every warning label, every fine print, everything is because of a problem. Somebody exposed a problem in a system that was apparently good, and now we have warning labels on coffee, right? There you go.
It's everywhere, man. Yeah.
It's the same thing. So I think you write it loose and you roll with it and you figure out what works for you, your personalities, your crew's personalities, your morals, and then you dial in where you need to. And there's times that I've written stuff down that we don't do it anymore. It collected dust. It's irrelevant. And I'm not opposed to that too. I don't hold them that dearly that I'm offended when people say, John, this is crap. I don't know what you were thinking when you wrote this, but it's no bueno.
Yeah. And that's good. It's not, if it's written down, doesn't mean it's perfect, but you're going to keep trying to iterate. And I think one of the points you made that was really important, and I've talked to Jason Phillips about this pretty extensively, is people, when you think about systems or process or SOP, people kind of freeze. Like, oh my God, I'm not like, I don't have an MBA. I don't know how to do this. But you said, hey, just start with the big things. For you, the curbside checklist, that's a pretty big thing. Just making sure, hey, we start this project right. Let's write, it's one page. It's one page after all the iterations you've already done. It doesn't even have to start at one page. It can start at one bullet, but just start somewhere. Start with whatever you think is the most important thing, and then just iterate and iterate and iterate. It doesn't have to be this intimidating, scary, massive feat. Just start documenting what you think is important.
Well, even with people we've had for a long time, I don't expect them to have all this stuff memorized.
Yeah.
We have books. I have binders with this stuff from meetings and notes and I wrote it and I couldn't articulate every word of it.
Yeah.
So if we're getting into exterior season, one of their meeting topics is prepping for power wash.
Yeah.
water's turned on, you know what I mean? Things like that. I don't expect everybody to remember everything. So all of our crews have their own personal binder where it's meeting notes or it's this company bulletin or it's whatever that they're putting in there that they keep that back by their offices or their vans, and they can go back and review that, you know. Change order requests. When do we get a written change order or not? Under $200, I don't care. Over $500, absolutely. Between $200 and $500, dealer's choice. If you trust the customer and think it's fine, go ahead and gamble. That's not the end of the world. But over 500, unless you're willing to pay the $500 that don't pay, have them sign it. You know, liability release. We had to move a piano last week. It was really sweet. The estimator told the client, expect to see this, a liability waiver for us to slide your piano over, and you're going to have to sign this on the job site. Well, it was super easy when the guys got there because they said, oh, well, and, you know, and they're like, liability waiver, got it. Already told me where to sign, no big deal. We don't memorize this stuff. Like, you got to go back and revisit it. And I always write them in a way that I'm leaving room and margins so that people can put notes or a little personal spin on it if it's kind of a script, and say that's so awkward for me to talk about, you know, this reviews. I can't say that I want to beat my coworker. So some people just say it's our company policy that you're going to get a review. They're more comfortable with that. Okay, I don't care. That's fine. Then run with it. But, you know, so those binders are constantly evolving. And when we get to the point that everyone's has a lot of text in it, we turn them in, I go through them, I rewrite it, and I usually put the new stuff in a different color font just to trigger people with, hey, this is the most updated stuff. You know, you kind of know the old stuff, but here's what we got to pay attention to. And people love that. I mean, I feel like it provides a sense of, you know where you're going with the company rather than, hey, Brandon, here's a paintbrush, start painting, don't ask questions.
Sure.
We get most of our things get better from the meetings with people and their own take on it and their customization. And like, John, that might have worked for you, but I can't just say, leave a check on your counter if you're not going to be home during a walkthrough. That doesn't work for me. I'm not you. I'm not comfortable with that. So, I'm just asking them, do you want your invoice text or email? That's my lead in. It's a question. I don't care your answer. I'm good either way. And boom. Then as the client, like, oh, I can click here to pay. This is great. I don't need to be shaken down or whatever.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you how you solicit feedback. And I know that'll probably get into the meetings stuff, but that's a really cool way to have people be able to basically leave it live, because that's going to be the best way for them to leave it. Otherwise, they're maybe going to forget little things here, little things there that make them uncomfortable, or they can just jot it down right there in the margin, you collecting them. And then people are building the company together too. They're building it's not just John's processes, right? It's everybody's. And there's a sense of pride and ownership, I think, that goes with that.
We talk about in the meetings. I mean, no one's sacred in our meetings. I don't have managers in meeting with crews. I like to skip them and that everyone's going to be put on blast. And we had a question of what mats to put down on hardwood floors and their ladders. And it's like, guys, I've refinished hardwood floors because I've effed them up. So if you don't want to F them up, can I just provide some advice? Like, this isn't because I'm above reproach. I've already learned. I spent thousands of dollars refinishing a guy's floor 15 years ago to know I'm putting a rubber mat down, and you need to as well.
Yeah,
that kind of humanizes it, because you get to the point where they feel like, oh, these are John's and he's going to hold them so tight to the vest. He's not going to be receptive to new opinions. And so you have to just expose yourself and say, no, these are all here because I've screwed it up. I made a mess of this before. So
I love it. John, thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Gold, as always. You make my life so easy. I do appreciate that, man. You come prepared. Episode 5, meetings. Meetings is kind of the thing we're not supposed to have. Meetings is what all the guru says. No more meetings. Keep your meetings really short. So I'm excited to your contra culture, right? I guess a lot. You go against the grain. So I'm very, very pumped up to hear what you have to say about meetings.
Remember, in our system, you're technically kind of clocking out for the meetings. And so if you get people to show up for one that they're really not getting compensated for, it damn well better be good. So
I love it. Back to episode 1, pay scale sets the stage, right?
There you go.
Pay approach sets the stage. Thank you, John.
Appreciate it.
If you want to learn more about the topics we discussed in this podcast and how you can use them to grow your painting business, visit paintermarketingpros.com/podcast for free training, as well as the ability to schedule a personalized strategy session for your painting company. Again, that URL is paintermarketingpros.com/podcast. Hey there, painting company owners. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give us your feedback. Let us know how we did. And also, if you're interested in taking your painting business to the next level, make sure you visit the Painter Marketing Pros website at paintermarketingpros.com to learn more about our services. You can also reach out to me directly by emailing me at brandon@paintermarketingpros.com, and I can give you personalized advice on growing your painting business. Until next time, keep growing.